Go. All right. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome for everyone who's going to be watching this live or later on YouTube. We just finished watching about 30, 40 minutes ago Microsoft's presentation live from FSExpo. The presentation was by Jorg, Seb, and a bunch of partners. The thing is absolutely insane. I'm joined today by Farl and
Hi.
Arrogant.
Hi.
Just like last video, I guess that's where our stream. That's what we're going to be doing. And I've been typing furiously some notes, so we have things to go by instead of watching. Because last time we did a trailer, which was 2.5 minutes, we ended up doing an hour. We're going to try to keep the hour as a thing, but we'll try to have about an hour and a half's worth of content in 1 hour. So we'll try to keep things a little condensed, but still add our own little extra points since we've all been a lot into this flight simulation knowledge. We all know a lot about the flight simulator by now, and we'll be able to analyze and get some elements which are more unique and more important than others, some which you may not have caught, or things like that. So let's get started. And again, arrogant file at any time, just pop in. There's really it's not a presentation just by me. It's all three of us.
To start,
Um,
and I'll throw in a few scenery questions I have.
oh sure.
So you
Go.
go, you begin.
So yeah, we had City Update 8 Las Vegas, which was a little preview, which was nice. They released that for Flight Sim Expo, so it made a lot of sense. And then they showcased a bunch of things. So for this, I will do things like that so we can get the proper picture. They've been releasing so much content every year. So they have some stats: 15 million unique users for a flight sim. That is insane. 1 billion flight sessions, of which 230 were in the last 6 months. Nearly 5,000 add-ons were created. Now, we commented this mean file that that seems more marketplace than
Yeah.
FlightSim.to, because how many add-ons do you have, Farrell, from FSTO?
Uh, about 8,600 small airports.
Yeah, you've got a bunch.
It's
So
got to be marketplace, doesn't it? Yeah, I
yeah,
agree.
yeah. So that's a bunch. So that's definitely just marketplace. FS20 is has a plan to be supported till 2028. So that's really neat. They're keeping this sim rolling for years, and they're planning to have updates almost every month. Not every month, but close. So we're gonna likely gonna have sim updates, world updates, city updates, the bunch, as well as all the different kind of planes that comes with it. And then we get to the big deal because yeah, FS20 is nice, but the presentation is about FS24. So they were showing all the different teams from Microsoft to Sobo. They have 25 teams for different partners, which is amazing. Some of these partner teams and people are from all around the globe, so it's just massive. In terms of what they have. The screenshots that I have, just a little note, are screenshots taken directly from the stream, so some of them might not be cropped properly. I was writing these and taking screenshots as soon as I could. um, cool thing, one of the partners they announced, well, that they're already working with the current tech stack, as York calls it, Bing Maps, Azure, and cognitive services on top of PlayFab and others. Found that interesting because cognitive services is not one we heard much before. I have a feeling this will have to do with accessibility as well as voices. The ATC, which we commented on last time about. So interesting stuff. And
For sure.
the way they did this presentation is mostly with the trailer, which we've already analyzed. It's funny, they told us they've watched a lot of different people analyze their trailers. So basically, they did the same. So they went through, they showed what basically has been announced, and they knew not a lot has been announced in terms of actual content. So this is where they went through the breakdown of this current trailer, and they went with a beginning. They showed obviously this beautiful picture, which doesn't look as good as the one we got in the trailer, so they got that right. First big one, Red Bull Air Races. That did not happen in FS20, but it did now for FS24, and they will have both Reno and Red Bull Air Races. I found that particularly exciting. Reno's information is coming later. They have a whole presentation. Um, the highlight for this is definitely the cones. Um, so Seb had a bit of a weird thing with how he said cones. He said they could rip, which is
Um,
strange,
They said something about you
but
could hit them and that they would fly away into pieces, I believe, was
so
his.
these are the cones. I think it was just his French going through, but basically as you hit a cone, kind of like these air inflated um
Yeah, advertiser
things.
thingies. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Um, you just hit them and they rebound. I think that's what they meant.
Yeah, so maybe this will.
So physics
I think he
simulations.
said I think he said break. Didn't
He
he
That's
just
did,
what I.
but
Yeah, that's.
I
I
yeah.
thought he said break into pieces and fly away or something like that. And I thought,
is Red Bull about
wow.
breaking these cones?
Well, nobody's ever hit them, but I would imagine if a plane hit them,
Because he
it's
he said break, but then he
they're not
said,
inflated. I
well,
don't
they will
think.
come back. He said they would form again. So this is why I in my
Oh, I
head
didn't
said,
hear him say
yeah,
that part. I heard
it,
the part about breaking into pieces. When he said pieces, I pictured
like
like
ripping apart. Yeah,
no, not ripping, but like
but
pieces flying away. Like you've hit a solid object that pieces just broke off and flew
yeah,
away. But if it's gonna come back,
because it's just a
then
crash. If you hit the object, it's a crash. I mean, you might just destroy your propeller, you might destroy your plane in the process.
yeah,
It would be acted like a crash. So it doesn't, for me, it was like, maybe it was more of a, it's inflated, it's simulated, you hit it, it will rebound, it will put its, so it
yeah,
must be
that would
kind of a
make
cool
sense
thing.
too. So yeah,
Yeah.
have to see how precise he was on it.
Yeah. They went on with the airport scene. So that's JFK, which is the screenshot we all know. This is what it was supposed to be. The screenshot right there, kind of interesting. It's like they took concepts by taking pictures, real life pictures, and then they're like, okay, let's do that in the sim. And basically, throughout the trailer, throughout the this presentation, they're going to show, the befores and afters, which is really neat. But yeah, lots of objects can now be added, a lot of which will be with the SDK. That's really neat. But I hope we can show all these details without performance hits. So either they've also massively improved performance, we're able to get as many objects for the same performance, or, you know,
We're all gonna need
maybe
to
there's more objects and a little less performance, but
yeah hit
more
the hit
relying
the
on maybe DirectX 12, or, from generation, FSR, or NVIDIA's different technologies to essentially smooth out, get a good frame rate, or whatever Steam's lossless um, frame generation tool is now. Then we get to the A330. They had a lot more to say than we ever had throughout this whole trailer. They had all the details of things that you could kind of maybe visualize and understand, but you're never sure. So they do confirm you can literally walk outside. So you can open your
yep
door and you
door.
can walk. So that is a
That's
feature
cool.
from FS20 that people had expected and is now
Yeah.
materializing.
I think they got one of the biggest cheers as well. No, I think that was quite
Yeah,
unanticipated. They
quite.
wanted
Oh
to hear
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
hmm And also, they have a pre-flight checklist, where they call is also available outside. So I don't
Outside.
know if it's like a panel, like we currently have with the checklist system, and you could just walk around your plane. Um, and then I assume you can obviously remove or add like your tags. The remove before flight tags also are cloth simulation, so they will flap in the wind. Sorry. Um, then yeah, they showcased this. I want to talk about this very quickly. They've added more points of simulation for flight models because Microsoft relies on the shape of the plane to determine what flight physics they're supposed to be. And it makes sense, right? It's kind of like if you put a plane model in a wind tunnel, you will get essentially the
Yep.
same thing right there. So the sim is the wind tunnel, and every little point is measured and helps with the simulation. So they've been able to add way more this time. So this is a really good picture of it. They also said it would take about 1 hour's worth of development time to upgrade to this new flight model. So that's very interesting. 1 hour.
What exactly do they mean by that?
I think it's a matter of changing some settings and regenerating a profile for your plane because it's not something that's done live every time. When you create a plane, it will generate this based on the geometry of the object you have. And so you probably have to go again and regenerate it and then re-input certain variables depending on how it is. And there's definitely probably more variables to handle, more things to give data so that the flight model can be as accurate as it can be. Because it's not just the 3D um, that is taken into account. There's a lot of other variables and data that you can input in And so that's kind of like what you'd need to do. So about an hour, which seems really good to be honest, but it also means that yeah, you could have backported planes from FS20 or planes that have died. You would still be able to move them forward. They just wouldn't fly the best because new flight model. This
Nice.
is the biggest moment. Ray tracing. Light for ray tracing. Seb said, look at the shadows. And you could see that there's no more of that weird glow. Shadows used to have this kind
Oh
of white
yeah,
outline.
they. I hope that's the same for reflections as well.
So they're
Closer
doing
to
ray
the
tracing for
reflection.
all of this. So I think this is where if you're mostly flight simmer and you're still on a non-ray tracing card, this is where you might have some interest, I guess. And shadows are really sharp. I don't know
Yeah,
about
they
you.
don't look jagged. They don't look like they were
Yeah,
jagged edges.
and likewise for this as well. Though it's much harder to see, but the shadows are much more sharper and are much sharper. There's none of that glow again, so I found that very interesting. And then they introduced the characters. So in this case, uh, either a pilot, and so they mentioned here different regions, different people. They have a company called Humane, which they partnered with for hundreds of scans of different actors. So you can have all of this, um, and then funny stuff. The passengers can be spawned in from inside the plane. Towards or in or out of the jet bridges, or also within the airports, and it seems like it's something which you can just spawn in at an airport and will be available for third parties to move around. That I thought that was really cool, and we'll see about performance again. Like all the extra things, that's
Yeah.
gonna.
Be interesting to see what the limitations were, wasn't it? Because they mentioned spawn points, but if you take an aircraft, can you spawn 137 passengers? Or
I
yeah, what are
think
the limitations?
they might be heavily optimized because if you look at this, it's pretty smooth, but a lot of that work can be done with textures to make things look higher detail than it really is. And so that face could probably be about 50 or 100 polygons, for example, without the headset, for example, right? And the rest is, a bit of the hair, and then the rest, is the cloth, which would not be a cloth simulation for that. Like, there would be way too much work, but interesting. Um, yeah, they confirmed what we thought was indeed the replay feature that was hiding some of these instruments from what they're supposed to register. So very interesting about this, and it's also a work in progress aircraft. Yeah,
Yeah, I was glad they cleared that up because there were some people that were sort of using that as a dig, and
yeah, but
but yet
that
there were
makes sense.
some people that catch that it could have been in the replay, so that was
Clean
good
up
to
our
confirm
tab
that.
count a bit.
Yeah, you were spot on, Cookie, on our recap with that one. To be fair, with the replay tool, I did say that as I was watching it.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. Then welcome back to Australia. That looks a lot better. So this is where we're going to see Seb talk a lot more about Azure AI. And visibly, they went through the entire world. And this is where, and I guess we can talk a bit about this as well. This is the transition from 2D to 3D. And
Yeah,
this is where every
exactly
rock is
what that
scanned.
really meant. Yeah.
Everything is in there. So you had something about that, Farrell, right?
Well, he mentioned how things were now procedural
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the 2D flat textures of the world, and that the entire world was going to be
I will just
this
increase your.
procedural
There we go.
um, behavior. In that, like you mentioned, the rocks being 3D, and that Azure would basically know where to place those rocks, and they had,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, I don't want to say textures again, but for lack of a better term, a lot of these objects that he seems to be talking about in the world have many variations on them, so that they won't just appear as, oh, I've seen that rock 5 million times, or I've seen that same tree 75,000 times. It's going to be
Well,
nice
I
to.
think what they're doing is they're using the same system they have for trees, where trees used to be based for their color on the satellite imagery. So they would sample the color of the tree in the satellite imagery, and they say, okay, well that would be the tree color. And for the rocks, it would be mostly the same. If you see like, oh, there's this little rock here, it's a little whiter than the rest of the ground. It's a gray, and then they would just sample that, and they'd have different rocks. Now this is where they're using this procedurally, which means you can kind of so procedural is essentially a formula where you can change different parameters of that formula to generate something unique, right? So think of it as you have an object like a rock, and then you have tons of sliders where you can change the size, the shape, you can stretch it, you can change the colors, you can add randomness factor, right? And this is what
Yeah.
procedural is. Basically, the sim has access to all these parameters, and based on, they could say, depending on the location, you could have that as the factor of randomness, right? Or, a factor of randomness could be the temperature today. And so they could use that as a random element to then generate rocks that you've never seen before, right? And then the placement is through the UI as well. Sorry, not the UI, the AI. Basically, everything is where it's supposed to be, which is really nice.
And so that's
Um,
going to give us a world with detail all over, even in very unpopulated.
all over, indeed. Yes, I
Yeah,
did
that's going
mention
to be
that.
great.
So basically, all your rocks, all your trees, all your grass, all your bushes, all of this is worldwide, and it does enhance quite a lot of the look from just the flat texture that we used to have with a bit of grass on top. Now
Yep.
you see the difference, and with the tessellation, where if you hit the ground, you leave a trace behind, depending on the weight of whatever you have. So if it's a plane, you'll leave traces behind, right? These things are pretty big. I don't know if they actually have traces in this here. Probably not, but interesting. The ground looks better, a little more bumpy. That might be texturing work, but that's really cool. We had it right with the hook. That is indeed
Yep.
how it's coming up. The banner is unfolding realistically. The whole thing. What's interesting is a subset for this one. The way it works is when you connect with the hook, which you're doing so by flying over the hook. Um, your plane is indeed taking that into account physically, and so you'll
Yeah, that
have a bit
weight.
of that
Yeah.
of that of that shock as your plane slows down as it's now dragging the banner. So that's really cool. And he said, yeah, everything's connected. So just like the real thing, the top section is a
Well,
little smaller
yeah.
in length, etc.
And I have a small airport that I live near, and I can't tell you the number of times that we've been driving by when they're picking up the signs to head out to the beach. And so it will be interesting because I've seen that like all my adult life. So it's going to be interesting to see that, if you haven't seen it a lot, you might not know exactly how that looks in real life. But yeah, and the neat part is when you watch the guy miss. We're stuck in traffic and he's like swooping down and trying to get
Hmm.
that hook, and then he misses, so he's got to go around, and we're still stuck in traffic, so we can kind of be there for 10 or 15 minutes watching these multiple attempts by multiple planes. So it was very interesting how realistic that looked to me when I saw those elements of that trailer. And I'm like, wow, that really does look like.
Hmm.
It'd be interesting to see the way you dive down. That's the only part,
Yeah,
but the taking off and
I'm
the way the
sure there's going to
banner
be
looks, and
tutorials for that. Yeah.
yeah, there's going to have to be because it
Oh, yeah.
doesn't look easy in real life. So
Moving on to this picture, a little different. Interesting things to note. So the water might look different, but that's a change from the lighting. Photogrammetry is mostly the same. They've done an upgrade. Miami has gotten an upgrade. That's interesting. Um, the boats are still the 2020 models, so they don't look that detailed, but they have definitely improved in quality, and you'll be able to see that later on.
later on, yeah.
There are screenshots that have been posted on the YouTube. It's all over the place. I don't know if I was able to take many screenshots because I was doing my best trying to get as much as I could. Cirrus Jet, maybe a working title, really cool. Well, working title has part of it. In the systems and everything. So that's really neat. The Cirrus clouds, which we talked about. So it seems right now they're just saying, yeah, you have the normal cloud type and then you have the Cirrus clouds. So it seems like they don't have 20,000 types, mostly just two at the moment, but very interesting. And we talked in a later picture in the trailer about the different layers of cloud and how the lighting was affected by that. And now the atmosphere is also impacting the lighting. So very lovely on that. Um, and then yeah, the this part is I think where some of my worries from last time, we talked about this scene with the crops and how we thought this could be a POI because of all the details that are in here. And I think
Yeah, that it would just be some localized
it is still
high. Yeah.
partly that because of the fences and all that stuff. But they did say Azure AI is essentially detecting all the different crops, their types, where they are, and they're spawning in the right 3D
Even the
models.
directions that they grow in, that was
Yeah, the
incredible.
orientation, I thought that was quite
Yeah.
an interesting thing as
And he
well.
said
Yeah.
something like 30 of them. So that's quite a. a selection.
Thank you, Azure AI. A really big heli made by Coronado. That's kind of cute. I loved it. This is where it gets to the very interesting tidbits. So again, we talked a lot about this section. We spent a lot of time on this. So it is confirmed, yeah, there is indeed a CFD that makes all the crops move as you go over them. But then there's a very, very, very interesting part. The CFD is staying on for 6 minutes, and they said that you could basically have wake turbulence for all aircrafts in the world. So that leaves me very cool, very happy, but also with more questions. Does this wake turbulence impact other people in multiplayer?
I wonder
Mm,
if it does. I mean, if it's attached to the CFD, then that means in effect it's a physical.
it's a big object, right?
Yeah.
CFDs would be done live. They're not. They managed to optimize the model so it's not too computationally expensive. But that would mean that it's an entire model that you have to export and bring onto another multiplayer. So I doubt it would be able to do that unless what they do is they generate an absolutely low quality simple model, something that fits in like 50
Or like a
kilobytes.
shorter duration, maybe. Yeah, like not
Well,
the whole
something very
six
simple.
minute.
Oh yeah. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah. And then just export that and send it to the next player in multiplayer. And then they would have essentially, just average out all these lines to one or two vectors and just say, well, this is kind of like what's happening here, and give an approximation. That would be very interesting. But, what would be the point of wake turbulence if you're alone? Unless you come back behind to where you went? Or if it's wake turbulence in the sense that, it's on the ground, it's the grass that you're moving, it's the trees that you're moving, and not other planes that are going to be impacted by this. So
Well,
this is where the language is scary.
maybe it's that tornado that we saw in the original trailer. Maybe that's
That's connected,
that
maybe?
that turbulence that it would put off, because one of the missions or whatever looked like a photographer, right?
Yep.
That's what I kind of got, and then of course with the one shot with the animal that shows the deer. So maybe one of the careers is, you know, aviation photographer, and certainly if you got too close to that tornado, those the turbulence from that thing should
That's interesting.
really rock a smaller aircraft for sure.
Hmm.
I did like to see, no, like even the tree there, didn't it? That started moving once
Yes,
the
that
once
was,
the
I
air
was like,
affected the
wow, that,
tree. And you imagine this kind of photographer thing? Did say you're doing some plane spotting and you've got like traffic on or real world traffic. You're just gonna sit. You're actually gonna see the tree move a little bit when the plane flies over. That's
yeah.
that's neat.
I really love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I had asked Cookie, I said, do you think that those wind effects on objects would be, otherwise, if you're just sitting somewhere, the one thing I wish they would have asked now that I think about it is, could you spawn in anywhere? I don't believe that
I
was
would
that
assume
touched
they
upon
do
at all?
because we
I would
know that
imagine now you can
from the
spawn in anywhere.
website Q&As and all that stuff that they've had, you could basically spawn in. Um, like you have access, from what I remember, you have access to the world map from within the sim. So in a way, they would have to make it in a way where you can basically access anywhere. And that's one thing of York, because York's kind of main plan is to make it as accessible as possible for everyone. And he's already noted this issue in the sim where you had to spawn in at an airport or you spawn
Yeah,
in the
on the
air. And so
roadway.
that was
Yeah,
something
or
that
in
was
the air.
indeed mentioned. I think it was either last year at FSExpo or it was in one of the Q&A written on the website. But I do remember exactly this, or maybe no, I think it was maybe one of the Q&As on Twitch where they mentioned this. So it is definitely something they want to do, and I think it will be part of it. It's just a detail compared to all the
Yeah,
things
so
they've.
what I basically was hinting at is, wouldn't it be neat if you could spawn in anywhere? The weather's nice. You're doing whatever you're doing, making your flight plan in the cockpit, because this is going to be a feature that you'll talk about in a
Mhm.
minute. And you're sitting there planning it, and then all of a sudden, a little rain shower goes by. You look out the window of your plane, and you can see trees moving. I don't know if leaves will be blowing, but it would just be nice because it gives the world that little bit more of a
Brings it to
feeling of,
life. Yeah,
yeah,
it
like
brings it to
being
life.
alive. Yeah,
Maybe Parallel 42 will bring effects for the leaves and stuff like that. That'd be
yeah,
cool because they're good at that kind of stuff
yeah,
visibly.
blowing them down the, yeah.
Yeah, boats. So I think this is funny. York thought this one would be cool, and so they did it. And then
The
uh,
Costa Concordia there,
y- y-
goodness.
you do see the issue with having a passenger boat. Yeah, okay, so they went with a tanker. which is still very neat. Cool thing for this, the boats do float with the waves. They're not in sync. They're not separate. So that's a big deal. The search and rescue is basically like it is. There's nothing new or specific. It's all about you go from point A to the rescue site, go down, grab the people, go back up. Really like it. Um, then more helicopter stuff, physics. So you do have something dangling at the end of that rope. It's heavy, and that messes with the way you fly. Because now you have an extra weight, your center of gravity is different, and that will impact how you fly. So it will get more complex because of the swing
Yeah,
effect.
to say if you really get a swinging effect, it could really
And
create
something
that.
interesting because that happens also with the ground effect. As you get close to a building or the ground, you have those turbulences that are created with the ground,
Yeah,
and you also have your object in the middle of that turbulence. So that's what they were saying here is very interesting. It's basically you're going to have this difficulty getting your object into the landing pad because of all this turbulence. So I can't wait to see how they do it, but I think it's going to be pretty
that was
much as we
code for I'm
expected.
going to be really terrible at flying helicopters, landing helicopters. That's
Yes,
what that was all about,
and the air crane is made by Blackbird.
which is nice. They do a good job.
Very nice. Another big topic for today. Let me
Oh, and
just.
so, before we got every helipad in the world was pretty cool as well.
Yeah, that
Yes.
was shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's. I don't know if I wrote this down. I think it's written. No, it's probably further down. I don't know. Yeah, but that's indeed a really important one. A400M, wonderful one. Um, yeah, they simulate the rotors properly this time. So they properly rotate at hundreds of times per minute, if not thousands. And it's properly physically simulated. So I found that very interesting. And yeah, as they chose that plane mostly because it's made for the purpose of small strips and cargo. So good job. I think we're all gonna love this plane anyways.
Oh yeah, it's
Um,
gonna be great.
yeah, here mostly like talk about the details of the vegetation, nothing new. The puddles, that was interesting. I think it was a little bit of a wink wink towards Austin and X-Plane, which has a lot of puddles as well. I found that hilarious. I don't know if it was exactly a reference, but
Good one for a little dig there. I
possibly.
didn't catch that. Now that you say it, I'm like, oh no, that's.
Yeah,
He
they're
says, I don't know
interesting.
if it'll be all over the world, but at airports. So
Right?
yeah, you might be right because all those pictures with the puddles at airports, and it was
Because
basically
it's like
saying, "Wow, we've got puddles." So yeah,
exactly
that might have been a subtle
a little
German
hint.
dig there. A little.
Hmm.
I didn't think about that till just now. Yep. Wow, we have puddles.
Maybe puddles. Yeah, which was really nice.
But again, it adds to the realism.
Big deal. Yeah, but then
Yeah,
you
that
don't
was
want just
great.
tons of puddles, right? Because for example, X-Plane has a lot of their screenshots now with puddles as part of
Well,
the
yeah,
marketing
everything's
material,
got a puddle. Yeah.
because it's got to look nice, and it does look nice. But then it's like, well, there's puddles everywhere, and that's another issue. This one is made by Asobo, a wonderful plane. Not only are they doing the full scan, the 3D scan, the measurements, but they also have flight data with test pilots. So they've actually flown. They showed a little video of Asobo measuring and being in different planes, testing things, going in level D flight sims and the bunch. So it was really cool how they're trying to do everything for the best flight dynamics, and so it doesn't feel or fly cheap. So major props to them on that. I wish they would have talked a little bit about the water, but I think it's just a basic effectometer with, you just throw your smoke and that's it. Very simple. How every game does smoke, you know.
Does it?
It's
Yeah.
basically it's like a 2D texture that will always point towards the camera, so your point of view towards it, so that it always looks, perfect. But you could rotate it 90 degrees, and it would just be like a little thin light. It's basically just a slab texture. So we'll see if that's exactly the case, if it's volumetric, which I would assume it is, because they're able to do clouds, and I do see a lot of grain. So I think that's what it is instead of just slapping a couple textures on there. This is amazing. This is the comparison between real life. This is FS20, and this is FS24. So maybe I should move this around. FS20,
Yep.
ugly. Look at how dark those trees are. It doesn't. It looks weird. No clearly defined edge between water and ground. Difficult. And yeah, the terrain. Basically, the trees are kind of weird. Finally get defined edges, with a variance in the different trees, bushes, and grasses. Obviously, the terrain looks beautiful.
Yeah,
And then,
it's
yeah, it's not that far off.
you know what's funny? If you remember the first advertisements for Microsoft Flight, this is the very, very beginning when they hinted they were coming back. They showed a mountain and a lake and some trees, and it was all the way down at like the lake
Oh,
level.
you know what?
And I
I
remember
might
thinking,
remember that.
Yeah,
wow,
yeah,
if
yeah.
only it could really look like that. That
Oh,
looks
yes.
like it.
Yes.
Remember it?
This looks like it. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. This actually looks like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. But now this
And do you
time
know what I
it's
like
better.
as well on that 2021? Like, like you've got the old trees and stuff. The difference is in the 2024 one where you got this open space, you could make a bush landing there. In the 2024 one we're looking at there,
Yeah,
and the 2020 you couldn't, so that real gives you that kind of VFR. Oh, look, here's a nice valley. I can land on a grass patch there. Like we like to do on a flight sometimes. You couldn't
also
do that
found.
there, but you
Yeah,
could
with
on the
all
new
those
one.
trees and stuff.
See how it
Yeah,
opens it up to that kind of like
yeah,
bushy exposure. Oh, we'll land
more,
there amongst the trees. Get out your little
More
tent.
opportunity for bush trips.
Yeah, you can add. There's a real world patch, and you can actually land on that patch that
and
you couldn't do in the old version.
uh, there's a stole plane we'll talk about later that probably absolutely could do that. So,
Oh, yeah.
yep.
I mean, Tech Arrow has been working on that plane. Uh, just a
Wow.
few comments on that. Yeah, 3D plane, grass, everything. So that yeah, about this, so that the planes are actually impacted by the different types of materials. So this is where York said, "Yeah, I'm terrible. I keep crashing." Essentially, your plane, if you get between a taxiway, grass, or just the ground in general, you'll have different types of friction. And so, um, was the addition of 3D rocks, you're actually going to hit rocks even more now. And so you're going to have to be very careful about how you land and where you land. You're going to have to look at the terrain before you do your landings because you will have different types of landing performances. Sorry,
Hopefully, like
ooh,
if it's muddy and
killing myself. Yeah,
you hit that muddy kind of, it's that drag
well,
that'd be
that,
very
or
interesting.
you might just hit a rock and flip. Nobody wants that.
That's a given. Yeah.
That's a given. But see, with little rocks, that could become the case. And if they're hidden in the grasses,
As
you don't
Av
see it.
Angel said in one of her videos, I think 2 weeks ago, Twiggy Twiggy,
Oh,
when
yeah. Yeah,
she hit that down tree that was
the
right there
huge
beside the
branch that
runway,
was
and
just hidden away, and you couldn't see
you
it
see that
coming in.
Twiggy Twiggy.
It's only once you
Yeah,
hit
now
it,
Twiggy Twiggy can kill you everywhere.
pretty much. Yeah. So I love this. This is FS24 versus FS20. I'm gonna do a little tab cleanup again. There we go. FS24, FS20. Yeah, it's not the same thing. It looks definitely better. This looks just your average place. If I told you where's this, I couldn't tell you.
You'd never be able to. Yeah, goodness.
This?
I mean, it's beautiful. We do have to remember what it was like in the older versions. Don't get us wrong. We
Let
were
me boot up
thrilled with
FSX.
2020. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
and not even FSS. Go back to 2004 or Flight Simulator, 2002 or whatever. It's just we're
Hmm.
spoiled big time now.
Big time. Yeah.
Yep.
So camera, this is technically, so what they said is you have the mode where you can walk out of your plane. And it's not like you have to click a different mode. Basically, you just open your door and you leave. That's from what I understood. You open the door, you leave, and you're outside. And from this, you basically can just turn on a camera and then point it, at an animal and not shoot it, but shoot a
Yeah.
picture,
Yeah.
which is a lot better.
Have a career.
Exactly. And I'm sure there's going to be tons of interesting things that people can come up with a camera mode, and there's going to be tons of amazing threads in the forums for that.
It's the
And
dirt on the wheels as well. Look at that.
Yeah,
yeah, that
That's,
looks.
yeah.
so for me,
And
this
to
is where I
know that it's
want
going to
the
have an
dirt.
effect.
I was talking about this last time. I want this dirt here to be a little higher quality because it's blurry in the way it is. So compared to the rest, which is much smoother, this part is a little blurry. So we'll see what it is, but I would love to see that slightly upgraded little things.
Right? It's nice. There's going to be a lot of animals. He did say
Fly
there'll
do.
be plenty more.
Plenty more, but see, like the way he said it is tons of animals, much beyond FS20, worldwide coverage map, but he said we'll talk about this more later. So
Yeah,
we'll
a
see
bit
what they
more
come up
details.
with. But we know about animal migration and the bunch from World 2.0, which was announced back in what 2022 or something. which is more of an effort rather than an actual product. So don't mistake it as when is World 2.0 coming out. It's just what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
Auroras and basically migration seasons, all these things. Flight do, forgot an O in my notes. A lot of people are scared of flying, so why not go slower? And it's really cool. There's going to be a better, more interesting screenshot of that coming up soon. Here again, lighting, we talked about it, about the atmosphere and how a ray of light, when it's closer to the horizon, has to go through more particles before it reaches you, which means it's red shifted. So that's why it looks red. And so it's absolutely mind blowing.
And the colors are more dynamic in that shot. More
Yes.
variations in color.
And as the light goes through the clouds, it gets diminished, right? So clouds start looking dark because there's no more direct light to it. So this is amazing. And obviously they have a VTOL plane here, made by Flight Effects. It's more of the air taxis type. Um, balloons. We love the Hindenburg. Well, I guess there's
Nice.
more
Yes.
competition here coming up. Skyship 600, really cute. Two things to note about this. Really neat because Jorg was like, yeah, it's much slower. So I guess it's not going to be the Hindenburg. It's probably going to be more like a 40 knot max, I guess, maybe even 20 knots. Who knows? So we're not going to cross the Atlantic with this yet.
Yeah.
That's why we keep the Red Wing Hindenburg for that from FS20. But
For
really
sure.
cool. It's like the lighting looks better. It's the same tech, but now it works better. That was from Seb. Found that interesting because it means, they had the plans to make things work and they did it right, but you had limitations from other side of the engine that were locking down the possibilities of that code working to its fullest extent. And that fullest extent is what we're seeing now in that screenshot. So really
Yeah.
amazing what they could do.
And the airship would be a great way to,
Yeah.
if you just wanted to go, slow and take all that in, that's a great way to do
And,
it.
and, and not only that, but, you know, it shows that FS20 had a very promising vision for it. They wanted this in FS20. They visibly couldn't because there were some things, but this is the same tech, so they managed to get it in there. Yeah, really cool stuff with the Twin Otter. Our opinions on this were pretty much right. Our
Yeah.
theories.
It's all
Yeah.
confirmed, wasn't it?
Still
Yeah.
Aerosoft. Yeah. Now Hans will be upgrading this. The guy's gonna be busy.
Yeah, and they did say totally reworked as well, didn't they? So
Yeah, they
I think you're
did.
going to get a new beast. So if you purchased it before, don't be disappointed. You're going to get something that's been reworked.
Yeah.
Not just here's what you had before. No, it's going to be a
Yeah, so
new
they probably
beast
have
apparently.
those sound issues will probably be fixed
But
and
I'm worried because Hans is one guy that does a lot. He's been working on a lot of different planes, even the ATR and a bunch, and we know that updates come in slowly, but that's fine. But that's a lot of work on one person. So making a plane, is so I think what's happening is they're keeping some of the elements because from what I understood, it's not entirely brand new out of nowhere. They are probably remaking most of it, but I heard specifically Hans will upgrade all the systems. So maybe they're
uh,
keeping the code base for the systems, and then Hans will upgrade that while the model and textures and sound are redone. So that's probably what was meant
yes,
there.
they won't be starting from absolute zero.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wasn't sure how to interpret that. Whether he meant Hans was working with Aerosoft, or he's just going to be doing the systems. But yeah,
yeah,
I think it's the way you said it.
and then
At
yeah,
least now we know
crocodiles,
why it was taken off the marketplace.
which we had a pretty good suspicion about. I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of made sense, right? And then this is one of the 30 biomes that is shown off, which, well, I think you guessed
Yes, that
correctly.
is a mangrove.
Yeah,
And I said it's either the Everglades or it's like Louisiana or something. And sure enough, that's what it was.
that's really neat. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Next big
Um,
point.
it's oh yeah. I want you to explain this the tin that
Yeah.
he kept discussing, and it has to do with
Yeah,
this
so
shot.
as you zoom in, you can see all the details. Just think of it as a big mesh, right? So 10 is triangulated irregular networks. Think of it this way, it's just a mesh of triangles. And the more data points you have in the mesh. So think of it like the more points you have in a mesh, or the finer the mesh, I guess, in a way you could say that, the more details you can put into it. And think of this as billions of dots at different altitudes, right? So it's just think of it as a purely square or rectangular mesh, and you bring it down through the image, and then some dots will stay up there, some will stay down here, some will keep going down and down and down, and basically now you have the structure, right? So tin surfaces are basically just a way to represent surface topology. Um,
Kind of sort of like dropping a blanket over something, and the
exactly,
more the
exactly.
more
So it's like the
detail you
3D.
get,
It's the 3D
yeah.
itself, right? So it's elevation modeling. And then you can put that together, add the textures, and connect it with the rest of the world, and now suddenly you have this beauty. Um, this is near Grenoble, which I actually wasn't sure where it was, but I did have a good guess with my dad. We talked about this a little after I showed him the trailer. I was like, "Ooh, that's neat, but that doesn't look like the Alps, at least not the north side." I was like, "Maybe it's further down." So interesting one. And it seems like they do have some really good source providers, but it's a long-term thing where they want to
He
get the entire
mentioned
world
them
like this.
buying 1 billion kilometers or something. What did
Yeah,
he
I, I
say?
I didn't get the notes on that exactly, but yes, they were basically getting as much as they could. Um, but it's like this is probably a couple of million points already. So it's easy to
And
say
he
big
said this whole
numbers.
process of purchasing is going to be going on like worldwide, so it's an ongoing
Yeah.
sort of
So,
rejuvenation.
oh yeah, yeah. And the goal is to have a digital twin, right? The entire Earth to have that kind of detail,
Yeah.
which is a very long term. Um, this is, a 10, 15-year plan as they keep going. Interesting. This was just to show, yeah, we go out to the absolutely edge of the world. Everything's going to have the details as much as we can. And yeah, this is a very remote place apparently. Uh, A10 done by DC Design, a little wink to Top Gun, the ultralights, very cute stuff. Azure is detecting everything again, so all the ground, 3D elements, rocks,
Yeah,
etc.
the ground
Even the cacti as well.
details amazing, the trees,
Yeah, pretty simple. We know about this. The seasons, beautiful
seasons.
thing. Every tree has its own pattern of responding to different seasons. So that's very unique. I like it. But that's not just trees, it's also the grass and the bushes. So different grasses will respond. Some will
Yeah, the
stay
fields and
green, some will go
yep.
yellow, brown. So that's really nice.
I would imagine the timing as well
Hmm.
will be in there. So
Yeah, it's like think of it like a time between a 1 and
different
0, like a
areas, yeah,
curve.
different areas turn,
They'd have different curves to
colors at different
transfer.
times.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see it move like north to south, depending on what hemisphere you're in.
Yeah.
It slowly migrate. That would be interesting. That would be great to see.
Well, I'd say even cooler would be if you're able to open the weather and time panel and slowly change the seasons. You like switch day by day, and then essentially create a montage of, what an entire year looks like in about 20 seconds or 30 seconds of video. That would be
Wow.
amazing. I would love to see, that kind
Oh
of thing.
yeah, yeah, sure. So you jump from June to like September to December, and
Hmm.
then to sort of see all the seasons from one spot.
Yeah, I would love to
That'd
see
be
that.
amazing.
Tab cleanup time. Let's clean up a couple of these. There we go. Balloons. So I took a couple of screenshots here because that one is very interesting. So they're showing the cloth simulation and how they were able to optimize it, which, cloth simulations, depending on the number of parameters, can be very easy to compute or extremely difficult to compute. And you want them to work in a predictable manner. So they're usually in a way that will always generate the same result given the same inputs. Um,
What was great though is that it wasn't just a static animation, so that he seemed to hint that it would behave,
it's
uh,
properly physically
yeah.
simulated. So as you could stop putting in hot air in there and it would deflate again. It is not just a simple animation made indeed. Yeah. That's a
That
good
might,
amount of detail.
deflate or inflate differently if there's wind or
Well, think of it this way. It's like the physics engine has been upgraded with a cloth simulation, which we've seen for the banner towing, for this, for the, remove before flight, things that are connected all over in the planes on the ground. It's all connected using the same system, just applied in different ways, and obviously dynamic. I really like that little animation because it really shows what they're able to do. And
Yeah, it
it's
was
difficult to
great.
do these things because cloud simulation tends to have issues where as it deflates and gets closer to itself, it will start twitching, it'll start colliding with itself, and that could create a lot of issues and sometimes use a lot of CPU power. So this seems really well made considering the efforts on this.
Yeah.
I like the dynamic element as well because obviously hot air balloons aren't just that generic shape, are they? That you know, so you can kind of have a slightly different design one, and
Right.
that can be done by another developer, and it will work.
Hmm.
That's cool.
So yeah, the lighting.
HPG did a pretty good job on the hot air balloon, and it had some
Yeah, you had
physics
one.
of
Yeah, yeah, they made one.
the inflating and deflating, but I think this is more complex.
But you could feel it was a pre-animated model, right? For example, the moment where
Yeah, it almost looked like it would happen the
when you were
same
falling
every
off of the
single.
sky in
Yeah,
one of our
yeah,
earlier we're
yeah.
doing
In
a
Paris,
yeah, we're
I think it
doing
was in
Adventure Through
Paris.
the Skies in Paris. Yeah, we're going over France. And
Yeah,
then yeah, you dived to the ground. You're a deflated
yeah,
balloon, but you could tell it was a pre-made animation that it wasn't exactly dynamic. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so the flames do have lighting. The lighting impacts the ground. It's fully dynamic lighting, and we also have the cirruses up there,
yeah. It had
which
like a
have their own lighting.
translucent kind of effect to it, which really
Hmm.
was
Yeah,
kind of new,
this.
kind of nice.
So the lighting is not baked, as you would say in the term, where it knows ahead of time what needs to be lit up, and it would just do that programmatically. Rather, this is like dynamic lighting, which is really neat.
You could make
Um,
some neat scenes, couldn't you? If you like, let's say the sun setting and you're flying over the pyramids with 8 or 9 balloons.
oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
Well, we're gonna
Yeah,
have fun with these, I think. They might be a little low and slow, but that's the whole point.
yeah. Safari flight, that'd be nice. See
Yeah.
some giraffes.
Then we have Got Friends, where they're Edgeley Uptica. We knew that this was coming up. We weren't sure if it was Got Friends, and I'm very glad it's them. They do have a model. Um, I think Orbex also made one, but it wasn't as great. And they
Yeah,
had
it
one
wasn't quite
earlier than
as.
Got Friends, so they had to discount it. So kind of neat. Little story behind that. The lighting. It's all about the lighting in this. Because there's no direct light coming through the clouds, the sun can only light indirectly. And as a result, the lighting bounces over the atmosphere, blue, sky's blue, and then hits down to the earth and hits the plane. And that's why you have this white and blue lighting instead of a yellow orange lighting. So that's very interesting. Again, this is beautiful. I love it. The lighting engine is top
Yeah,
notch.
it's really looks fantastic.
Yeah. And then this again, same thing with the lighting, and then obviously the auroras, beautiful, fully simulated. Essentially, it's a shader. So if you know what that is, then you know that it can be very dynamic, and that's what they did. So you could do everything with it, and that I found that amazing. That's really neat, and the best way to do these things. Now we get to the very interesting details. So we're done looking over the trailer, and this is where they're starting to get into partnerships. And so there's been tons of partnerships we made. In the presentation, they would invite a partner, they would talk for a little bit, and then they would sit down, and they would move on to the next partner. And at the end, they'd have a nice little panel for Q&A.
this is where it starts to get cool.
I think this is where it gets mind blowing. So they got working title. Uh, they started as a team of five, now 26, and they had a guest, Rob, which came in, and they started talking about a route planning tool, which honestly looks very much like another company we know named Navigraph. And I think there's a big competition there now. Well, this is beautiful. Let me hint at a couple things just from this picture. Top right, that's a profile picture. So this is a website screenshot. And they did announce that everything from the flight planning would be available on mobile browser essentially, or inside the sim as well, and in the virtual cockpit. So very interesting stuff. But it's basically one unified platform you can access inside or outside the sim. So this is basically like a kind of like the World Hub if you're inside the alpha for this. You have your little website and then you have your tools inside. So this is amazing. It's all in there. You can plan flights, you can monitor progress inside, in and out. Um, it's the full thing. So you have both a graphical way to map your flight, or you can do it through text, basically entering your SIDS and stars and everything. Um, and you can do the same with your fuel and planning, ETOPS, a whole bunch of things. They also have VFR planning. They do have overlaid charts, procedural charts, the whole bunch, as you can see from this. So this is a huge blow to Navigraph. I thought Navigraph was going to be the one to do this, but
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was
me
quite
too.
shocked by that. Yeah,
this is a big deal.
but it is a really big deal. I was really impressed by this, the level of details that this goes into.
Now think of it
And
this way: they said every plane would have a tablet. This is why.
yeah, yeah, it really explains why now, doesn't it? Because you can do this. Well, what's great is you can do this in the game, and you can pop this out anywhere you want, in your plane, outside of the sim browser and stuff. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
And
it's going to revolutionize.
fully detailed. You know, aircraft, departure, arrival, performance, flight details, your route, payload fuel, extended operations, summary, options, debug. Need to have the debug thing because you might need that. But that's basically what you get. So this would be your tablet. This is cool, but I think it's not just for airliners. This would also be able to be worked very well for VFR. It's just many of the features of this are not targeted towards VFR users. You're not going to need to do procedures in VFR flights, but you could still definitely map out a flight plan, and this would very likely still show up in the VFR box for your map. So you could basically just put it in there and create your flight plan. So this is likely the way that Microsoft said, yeah, you're going to be able to have the world map in the sim. It's through this technically. So maybe they'll also have a way for you to spawn in at a new place using this tablet. Maybe not this exact mode that we're seeing here, but something similar. I think they could integrate this.
Okay.
I mean, this to me is an absolute. I do some occasional IFR flying, and like, it's a game changer. I have Navigraph, and I
Yeah,
have to. I play on one screen, and I'm alt tabbing back, getting the tablet out, looking at it, going to Navigraph, then go back to the simulator and stuff like that. This is an all-in-one solution.
it's massive.
Um,
It's massive.
yes, yeah,
Because like your fuel calculation, I guess this is a runway calculation. Like you don't have that in many payware planes. So this is a fairly new standard in getting higher quality electronic flight bags, where you really get all of the tools that a real pilot would get into doing the latest calculations. If there's weather changes, runway changes, then you could do that on the fly with a tablet. But what's amazing with this is since it's also done on the web, you could now have a tablet next to you, just log in through the website, and you could just have it there, separate. So you could have literally a tablet with this UI next to you. I think that's game
yeah.
changer.
So you're like in real life EFB, you have like if you're doing some Wi-Fi flying, you've got your tablet there and you've got it set up. That all integrates with the sim already, and
Exactly.
that's fantastic. You
And
can
for
tap it in.
the
You can literally sit there tapping it in on your tablet whilst the sim's loading, and it's going to be there when you go into the game and
mhm.
load up. That's just great.
Navigraph must be pulling a hair or two out.
That was my thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be big. They're gonna have to compete on I don't know what. They're gonna have to find a unique factor for this, but it seems like they might lose some subscriptions. I thought they were gonna be the partner, but guess not. Last thing, this could be also very advantageous for some pilots, which start a flight and then do other things and then come back later on for landing. Is it overnight or during the day? Some do very long flights, and so you can have this, so you can basically monitor from anywhere, which is really cool.
Yeah, like you do
Um,
remember you used to do those old like 8-hour flights where you cross the Atlantic, go to bed and see how you're doing in the
Yeah,
morning.
wake up in the morning. Yeah.
You can
yep.
just look on your phone. You wake up, go, do I need to get up and land yet? Oh no, I've got 2 hours back to sleep.
Exactly.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, they've been working on a lot of things like this. They're a little bit confusing thing with the presentation at the end with the avionics and their framework, but visibly a lot of this would be available for uh, connecting your plane and your data into this tablet and mode. So it seems very interesting. Another partner, Climax Game Studios, helping with many game modes. Very interesting. I don't know what they mean by game modes. Maybe that could be career mode, like inside the game, the career. You had different
Yeah,
modes
that's
for
what
that.
I kind of took it that.
Or how we have Red Bull and we have Reno. That's maybe another mode. And then if you, or maybe it's, you're inside your plane versus you walk out. Is that considered a different mode? I don't know. But game modes for me is more, maybe you have racing, maybe you have activities, maybe they're combining this in a
Could
different
they
way.
be could they be working with Microsoft for the careerish kind of mode,
They could.
maybe. I wonder.
It's very much possible. So we'll see if they have, like, oh, free fly, race, and then career, and then activities, and then in there each could become
Challenges, yeah.
subsections. Like race, you have Reno, you have Red Bull. Activities, you have different landing challenges, and the usual that we know and love.
We'll actually be
Bush
getting one
flips.
of those races before the actual race
Yeah,
happens
yeah,
in
yeah.
Roswell, New Mexico. So that was very
For
interesting.
Reno, indeed.
That's
Yeah.
neat. And of course, it's included this time as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's included, so it's
That's
not a
not a
separate.
payware
Hmm.
as Reno will launch. So I don't think it will. It will. Well, it will be more popular, I think,
I think
Oh,
than
so
the
because
definitely.
yes,
payware. Yeah, yeah,
And
certainly.
I have some friends or acquaintances as well in some discords, which are very much related to air racing, specifically the FS2020 Reno Racing International Discord, which I'm sure must have been exploding with joy seeing not only this, the paywall being
Oh god, yeah,
removed,
not one but two.
and
Yeah.
then
yeah.
having those two things. Yeah, very much. Then we get to Wishlist 3 replay functionality. I was a little bit surprised because we do have already a replay, not for Xbox, but we do have an experimental feature for PC. But they're essentially partnering out with Flight Control Replay.
Sorry, I just read your comment here.
Uh,
The note you put there next
oh,
to flight
right.
control replay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
This part of the
Just
presentation
made me
took a bit
chuckle.
longer. Turns out that the presenter was from Italy and English was not his first language, so it was a little difficult for him. But it was
You
also,
put
I
on the
think, a
spot
little
there.
difficult for the audience to listen to the presentation. I think it should have been shorter and maybe a little more scripted. I do
It
know.
probably would have been if he would have been able to, just say that in his own
Well,
language. It probably would have
if you look
obviously
back at the
been.
video, working title had someone which was looking in a very specific location fairly uh, often. So I think there
Yeah.
was a prompter with some information that they had prepared. And maybe that was
It's
not the case
exciting
for
that
him.
this
But
feature is now going to be not no longer like in a dev mode experimental feature, but it'll actually be more like it'll be a better version of what we had in older versions of the sim. And
now,
it was an integral part of the older versions of the sim, so a lot of people were looking forward to it. So it's a good
yes,
thing.
very much so. I hope it's going to come for Xbox.
Yes, I hope those people get it as well.
Something I hope, and I really hope, but at the same time I don't. There's two things. I think they're flying an FS24, but with an FS20 map. Because if you look
Okay.
at their instruments up here, you see where they are. You see a
Hmm.
top-down little map thing.
Yeah, I took note of that. Yeah.
But then this looks a little different in the UI. This is a different UI, but this is an old UI. And then look at another thing. Your ID.
This is I was about to say that this is the first I think scene where we've seen the ID flash up, isn't it?
So
Like we
this is
used to have
where
in the alpha
we
and
know
the
this is
yes,
FS24.
yes,
So
yeah,
this may be the new UI. And I'm very sorry to say this handlebar is still there.
Oh, it's
yeah. I
So
bigger
noticed.
and it's bigger. Look how much wider it is.
exclusive sneak peek at
Mm.
FS24. That could be the title of this whole thing.
Now it's.
Yeah,
We
because I was
literally
watching this
have it.
presentation and noticed that the obviously where it comes up like you used to have in the alpha, and I'm like, okay, so we know we're looking at 2024 then,
Hmm.
like
And look at the
because that
skid
wouldn't be there.
marks. Big difference here. Well, skid mark more like all the rubber on the runway here. And obviously he's alone. You don't see any multiplayer. I found that very interesting. The UI, I hope, will be a little more changed because I'm tired of this type of UI. It's not very functional. It's not very active. It's difficult.
Yeah, it's
So
not
even if we
super
get
easy
something like
to.
this, I mean, they're not going to change dramatically. They're still going to have, I think, like windows like this kind, but I want it a little more functional and a little less clingy. And then look at that. Still have the weird name tag thing. So I hope that name tag. Sorry, I meant tail number. I hope they fix the tail number just being a completely white box when you have
Yeah, that was sort of a
multiplayer. But
pain.
this makes sense because this is a replay feature and this is a ghost. So it's an instant replay. It's really neat. You can have ghost planes. You can fly with yourself as many times as you want. Um, But yeah, I want to see what the UI looks like. I'm very excited. They didn't say anything about an alpha or beta for FS24, but heck, do I want it? I know, right, Handman? World partner Gaia, they talked about it. They have 115 people working on it. Really neat. They have a whole research team for 10 editing. Wow, say that 5 times quickly. Then they showed some. This is only 2. I wasn't able to capture the rest, but you just get the difference in details from the old to the new.
Things look a little more aged, ever so slightly, if you notice.
Well, you see,
A little
this
bit
is
dirtier or a little bit.
the
It's just,
textures are a little weird. The
yeah, it's just,
windows are just meant to be closed, so you're not going to see the inside. And then, yeah, the rest is pretty fine. You see less objects. This one, you see through with the windows. You have a clearly defined, well, there's definitely still an issue in here, but maybe that's how it is in real life. But you see a more defined structure, like you have the wheels on the round here, and then you have like this thing. Compared to here, it's just, well, it looks a little weird. Like, I don't know what that is, right? So that's kind of neat. I don't know what that is. Is that like stairs on the ground? There's still wheels at the bottom? I think that's what it is, yeah. Or yeah, maybe stairs. You're right, Handman. Yeah. Interesting. But yeah, more details, a little more how it's supposed to be, see-through windows, a couple of more details. Like the tower looks a little nicer, more objects, and again, more screenshots with the same method of your ID. So thank you, Dubious Magician, for showing us a screenshot of that. Glider airports, they want to have all of them. They will have all the airports. It's the first time they're making a database of that, which means I think there is no other database in the world of all the glider schools and all the glider airports. So they've been working on them
yeah,
all.
that's going to be a big
And
addition for
they were
people.
looking very specifically, what do you have down there? What is your equipment? That way they can also have that data and put it in. So that's really neat. And quote from York, it will be crazy good quality. Really nice. I really love that. So it's not going to be, randomly generated airports where it's just AI that just went through and did the, painting of it. Um, then oil rigs are all going to be in the world. He showed 3 or 4 screenshots. It's in the video. I don't know if I might just take a look
Yeah,
quickly.
Aerosoft ripped out a hair there with their what was it, North Shore update with all those
That's the
oil rigs.
replay.
That's gonna basically make that obsolete.
So that's the glider airports, which look really nice. Ground markings are all improved.
Yeah.
And that's something they're going to talk more about in the future, but I really like to see that because those are often very strange in the sim. Uh, and look at those details. I just love that. Again, Dubious Magician, your ID thing, so it's fresh. So they have all different kinds of winches and things like this to get yourself in the air. And then the oil rigs, a couple of screenshots. I'll just
This
pull
as
up.
well. Every glider airfield in the world and what kind of machinery they've got, and
It's old,
like
but it's cute.
every single oil field is just
Yeah, I mean, how many
It's
thousands of them
doable,
are there?
but again, look at the details.
Yeah, the
Everything's in
details
there.
just
Maybe I should do
wow.
this for a second so you could see better, but look at that. It's just insane. You have all the railings, you have absolutely everything in there. So that's the kind of details that are interesting. And this is maybe why they modeled these very high. It's so they could also have a super wide range of missions. So if you have all of
Yeah, I
these in
hope
high
they make that
qualities,
one where you're
makes sense.
ferrying out people out to the. Because they had a famous accident when they ferried out of Aberdeen, going
Hmm.
out to the. It was one of the episodes of Air Crash Investigation, and that helicopter was able to inflate upon landing, and they all got
Oh,
into. I don't know
right.
if you saw that episode. They
Yeah.
all got into the raft, but then some
Hmm.
of them didn't make it. But yeah, it would be an interesting mission to be able to take workers out, or the famous well, I can't remember the name of it. I think again it was a British oil rig that caught on fire. Famous one. A lot of people unfortunately perished on that. But that would be something trying to go out there and get people off of
do the evacuation. Yeah,
yeah, doing an
Yeah.
evacuation from
was
a
very
burning oil
similar
rig.
old flight simulator mission like that, wasn't there?
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, there was. That's right.
So yeah, they've also upgraded the global ship AI traffic, so now it's better modeled and detailed. It only took 2 screenshots. I know this is not necessarily the screenshot people want to see of all, but just shows you even close up the amount of details is quite better and insane. And they are getting people from Geist, which is really neat. Basically, the global AI ship freeware that you can already download, and so they're all together. Interestingly enough, they did have an FS20 a global AI live uh, database for boats, and the company got bought out. So their data provider essentially disappeared. So kind of neat. It's not something you really advertise when that happens, but it's neat that they tell us about this now because it does make sense. Boat used to be way more active and suddenly kind of disappeared. So everyone downloaded the add-on.
Yeah,
Um,
I've had it the whole time. So
yeah. Then Orbex is next, and they've been hard at work. They're doing a lot of things. They're doing all the dem collection and editing, uh, World Hub management and all that stuff. But they've also been working on a geospatial team. Like this is basically the type of mesh sceneries, like world mesh sceneries that used to be a thing in P3D and X-Plane. Basically the same thing. Um, and they're trying to work with VFR maps as well, add all the data in. They had a map of a VFR. Basically, they're doing all the obstacles, all of the towers, all the antennas, everything. And they're working with Puff and Flight, which is amazing, which is the We Love VFR add-ons.
another smart.
This was brilliant because I was shouting at the screen, going, "Oh, Obex, why didn't you just work with Puffin Flight? Puffin Flight are
Right.
brilliant. They've done all that work." And he goes, "Oh,
Exactly.
and we're working with Puffin Flight." I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah,
okay."
It's
very
like they
smart.
waited a little too long to say that, but they should have said it a little
Yeah, we
earlier.
were all yelling at our monitor.
Yeah.
No, you should just get it from them.
Mhm. It's hilarious. And so, yes, they don't want just North America and Europe. They also want, and it's funny because they named Asia and Africa, or actually opposite, Africa and Asia. But I felt bad for the people in South America. Like, if you name everything, name everything. Don't leave
Yeah.
one or two
Yeah,
out.
I did think that. Yeah,
But
nerves on
that's fine.
stage, though, right? I suppose. I know what you
Yeah,
meant.
yeah.
Yeah.
Stage is could be a thing. On stage, it's a little frightful. You got a whole audience, and you got to say things, and you're limited in timing,
Well, he did
and
say Niels, Niels was in South America, so at least we figure for
yeah,
boats they won't be
Henrik Nielsen.
lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really neat. So yeah, you could see basically the difference. It's like We Love VFR. It's basically before, after. So you get the cooling towers and you get the bunch. That's really nice, I think.
Yes.
In this one, this is clearly FS20 because there's none of the little your ID images. And then more of these towers again, FS20. I was like, "Ugh, the terrain doesn't look the best, and it's a little hard to see these things, but it shows the diversity of all these antennas. So really cool stuff.
Are you starting to relax a little bit, Farwell, about all the add-ons you're going to have to get now? The space. I'm thinking, oh, that's
Yeah,
one I don't have to get. That's
I
another.
yeah,
there's gonna not
It's
worry
gonna
about
chill.
space
oh,
so
yeah,
much now.
yeah, I don't
Yeah,
have to worry about the
Yeah,
the ships. I don't have to worry about the VFR. So it's
the
little
more
by
it
little by
goes on,
little. Yeah,
and the ships are
yeah.
it's a big add-on. It's
yeah,
like 10 or 20
three.
gigs depending on what
Yeah,
you get.
it's quite big. Yeah.
Yeah, so then we have Got Friends, which is also another partner. This one's amazing. So they're redoing their Edgeley Optica, or in this case, I guess it's the ROL Vera Optica.
Aereo Elvira Optica.
Yeah, I don't know if
Yeah.
it's exactly the same as the Edgeley. Maybe it's a little faster. Doesn't do other things on the wings here. I should spawn in mine in the sim because I have the current Got Friends Optica, the Edgeley one,
Yes,
and we'll see
I
how
do as
different it
well.
is. I want to compare that. They've also been working hard with gliders, and this is amazing. So they have a flight computer of the LX family, and this one's amazing because basically they're converting the flight plan that is currently in the sim, and they're putting into this flight computer that allows things to be translated for gliders. That's how gliders work, and so now you get that direct compatibility. Really cool. Will be on Xbox. That was for me a major point. This is in the game for Xbox, which is really cool. And it's a suite. It's not just this one computer. They also have an LX Vario, which is basically the same thing, um, but with Steam gauges. And very importantly of all, it's all interconnected, so it's all synchronized. So you can always access them, and you put in the data into one, and it will synchronize with the rest. So you have the stem. I think it's the stem 512. I captured that from the one of the screenshots because I skipped the name. So I think that's what the plane is for the glider. Basically, tons of details. Solar panels work, which is amazing. I think that's another little extra detail. The flaps also work the way it's supposed to be, and for gliders, not the same as other planes.
Yeah, it sort
And
of sets you at a speed, and
yeah,
you set the flaps to hold you at a speed. Yeah,
exactly. And amazing thing with this is, yeah, it's a very expensive plane, so you get to try it, and it's really well detailed from what it seems visually and both in the sim. So, oh, Hammond says, yeah, look at the fog in the screenshot. Indeed. Uh,
yeah, it does
I
look
didn't
good.
notice that too
Oh yeah,
much.
yeah, nice. Yeah,
I
good
was
spot.
more focused here because this looks good.
Yeah,
I
I was. Yeah, yeah.
was
No,
like,
Yeah,
that's
ooh,
nice.
all of this and
Shallow,
that.
nice shallow fog. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that might be FS20, considering we don't have the low URID, but hey, we might get some interesting things with that. Then we had Mike Payde,
oh
who's working
yeah,
on
this
another
is a good
plane,
one.
Oh, this is cool.
Draco
Yeah,
X. And it's funny because I was
this
saying
is
to
the one I
Farrell,
was hinting at. Yeah,
this looks interesting. It looks like the Wilga.
yep,
And
it
then
does.
10 seconds
And
later is made by Got Friends. I was like, of course.
it's got a
So,
really powerful engine. We're talking
1,000 horsepower.
horsepower. This
Yeah.
jet, basically a
But
jet.
it's a
What do you say?
PT6, right? It's Pratt& and Whitney,
Yeah,
so it makes sense. They're really good with this kind of stuff. That's why this whole segment of the aviation is basically dominated by Pratt& and Whitney. So yeah,
yeah,
really
and
cool
this,
stuff.
yeah, that'll be neat. And it's all part of the
That's going
sim,
to be
so
a
we're not.
fun plane to play with.
Yeah,
That
for
is. Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
That's going to be
for
the
sure.
Wilga equivalent in today's, but on steroids, basically.
Yeah, on steroids.
We're getting to the end. At this point, we had so they had 18 partners. I had 18 to more to come. That's amazing. 10 to come. I don't know if it's more to come if we only showed 8, and I think that's what they did. They showed 8, but there's 10 more with more things. So really cool stuff. All their partners are here. Obviously, I can't hide it long. Asobo is the one making the 737 MAX 8. And I'm kind of mixed on this. We know that Asobo in the past with the A320, the 74, the 78 have not been particularly high quality, and they've often had to focus on other areas of the simulation, and therefore, you know, the airliners were a little left behind. And those eventually got upgraded with working titles. So now that this is done, I have a little more confidence in Asobo doing that with the help of their partners to really build this. But this is more of an Asobo plane, not a partner's plane. It's not any builds rather.
This to me too as well. Jorg instantly said. He said this is Asobo's most complicated plane they've ever. The most complicated plane they've ever worked on. So it's like they're working as
They're
deep
actually
as they
working on
possibly
it.
can on this. And second point as well is I'm not too worried if you are that kind of serious. I know it's not so much on Xbox, but on like PC, if you're that serious kind of like IFR simulator, because that feature's not quite how I want it, someone's going to step in and do it, and it's going to be a download, to upgrade it. So we've seen that happen with the original Airbus A320 that they made, so it will get those modifications for if you really want the nitty gritty, won't it? If
Yeah,
it's
the
not there already.
747. It got.
Yeah, yeah. What's
So
he
yeah,
called? I
I
can't
think.
remember his name now. Yeah, you got
Yeah, I'm
that
trying
add-on
to
for the
remember.
747.
Yep, I'm trying to remember as well, but
And this was a video, so I couldn't really go too much over it, but I couldn't take all the screenshots fast enough. But I was seeing that, I was like, oh, okay, so this is Boeing because you can see the little buttons like this. You have your extinguishers here like that. You have your fuel cutoff here. 2 engines, obviously. Speed brakes right there, flaps there, so you know it's Boeing. It has to be Boeing. Then you see all this, so you have all screens. So it's a more modern plane, so you're not looking at the older Boeings. This is obviously in the lower range. They already have the 787, so it's like, well, what are they doing with this? So for me, it's like, okay, it has to be some kind of maybe 7.3, maybe
Yeah,
a
I was being
triple
really
seven
slow
at
with this.
first, but it's gray and it's not brown, so it's the 7.3 series. I was like, okay, but what? Um,
Yeah, it's like two engines, but it's the new screens. It's got like the 7/8 screens. I'm like, what could it be? And then the Max come. Oh, of course.
yeah, exactly. You could see some things are in there, so it does seem like they're happy enough to show what they have here. So it means they're at least at a fairly advanced stage, I would say, not complete, but I mean we're 5 months from release, so they should have something fairly substantial by now. And you can see there's an airport here hidden by the sun, as well as some lines and everything. So it does seem like they have a flight plan loaded, and yeah, those.
It's just pretty decent to be fair, and They said the time to come and add the community mods. This is decent.
Oh yeah, 100%. The details are there, and it's funny because it kind of eats up on PMDG, but PMDG already released a couple of 737s, so it's not like they're eating up their entire market share.
No,
Despite
it's not stepping on their toes, is it?
PMDG has not released a max version yet. I think not the max 8.
No,
They have
I think that's
released.
probably maybe they had an agreement there. Yeah.
So yeah, actually, I could verify this. What we could do is check very quickly PMDG and look at their planes. And this is in no way for us to market PMDG in any way. It's just, let's see what they have. Yeah, they have the 9, 8, 6, and 7. Yeah, so they don't have any max yet. So that's interesting. I don't think PMDG is involved in this though. So yeah, I found that cool. Beautiful plane. And then we went to the Q&A at the end. And poor guys, the presentation ended in an hour and 24 minutes. So Forder Learn to Fly, as you know him, or just Forder, had a seminar right afterwards about, Flying 101, the basics of flight, how to get started in aviation. And the poor guy was moved by about 40 minutes on the schedule. So um, good sport, I think. Poor guy.
Yeah.
And then they went to Q&A. Some were good, some were a little less. First one is about the mission system. Would it be exposed to third-party devs? And Jorg put a very generic response. So they're just like, the we're trying to make things so you could pick your passion. It's not a game. There was an interesting word he came out with: certification. Do certification for the plane.
Yeah.
So I was like,
Which you're
huh,
going to
okay.
need to
Yeah,
get
that
through
caught
that.
my attention.
Sounds like
You're not
Neofly.
going to,
Basically, you work your
yeah.
way up, then you do a check ride with the plane, and then you get access to the thing. I don't know if they'll
The
do check
mission.
rides, but
Yeah.
fingers crossed.
At least it wasn't an automatic, oh, hey, I'm a superstar in one day. So
Yeah, you don't start with
that's,
a
nope.
with an A380, right?
Yeah, you're not rescuing people off of a tanker on doing your first 15 minutes of the job.
Exactly.
So
No, I mean
good.
that feels great to me. Like you can, start out as like, a pilot going to do a
Yeah.
certification, and you start in small planes, and you can get on to do an airline career. I mean, that's fantastic.
I mean, the idea is perfect. You get the achievements, so you kind of feel like there's a reward and all of this, and you can kind of showcase that to other people. That's something they try to do with the first one, with the profile page in the sim, FS20. It's also a good way to kind of force you eventually to use all the different planes in the sim. And force, I mean, because, you know, if you're really into airliners, you're not going to try GA much. If you're into GA, you're not going to try airliners or helicopters or gliders. It's kind of like you do one group
Yeah.
and you're not that comfortable trying other groups. So this, with proper, if you have a learning center like an FSX with text so people can read, as well as training missions where you do things on the spot, then I think you could have a very good game, a very good career mode, and a very good simulator for people that want to fly in the sim as a proper pilot.
And after all, he said, we're not taking anything away. We are just adding to it. And that's the important thing that everybody needs to. Oh, you're
Are they going
turning
to
into a
remove
game.
fly
No.
mode, like, free flight? Yeah, no.
And it's like, no,
Mm,
they are trying to attract the biggest audience they can. And
Yeah,
that
for
involves
everybody.
people that know nothing.
yeah.
That's people that know everything. And it's for all the people that lie in between.
Mhm.
And you've got these games with 100 million people playing GTA. Wouldn't it be great if we could get 100 million people using Flight Simulator? And if
Well,
you need a
yeah.
career mode and activities and fun, crazy ass missions in order to get that done, then so be it. You're not going to strip away
Very much
the
so, yeah.
core sim in order to help you catch gold coins in the sky. So I'm not.
Well, say you've got Games Pass on Xbox. You've got to get that
Yeah,
market. And they play GTA, and now they've got Flight Simulator. They're not all like playing geeks like us, or they'll fly around the world together. They want
right.
a reason to fly. So, like, what's the
Yeah,
reason to fly? I need a game mode. So I
right.
need that. Does not step on anyone else's
Objectives,
toes. It's a
adventures, drama,
great idea.
consequences. Yeah, and
Yeah,
you know,
great idea.
Exactly, yeah. Then they went into different questions. One was interesting about the visibility. Essentially, it's like, well, the quarter mile or 100,000 foot RVR, clouds and fog, and the obvious at the end of the question, third-party weather injection. And yeah, it's funny because Seb was like, well, yeah, well, sorry, yeah, Seb was like, yeah, we want to improve this. Yor was like, we're working on it with Medio Blue because it's obviously the bottleneck is, what can you do? It's your data
yeah.
provider, so you got to get that working. And then the later part of the Q&A, some guy referred back to this saying, yeah, we talked about some of these things with Seb, and give him a break. They just need to understand the issue, and then once that's the case, then they can fix it. But if they don't know what the issue is, if they don't have the data to be able to work with it, they can't do anything with it. It's like asking you to do a task you don't know, how to do execute. You just can't execute. So sometimes complaining and telling them, yeah, it's wrong is one thing, but then, you know, they need to be able to understand why this is happening, how it's happening, and what it should be, and then work for it. So I thought that was really neat. And it showcases the weakness of Media Blue as a partner, where it visibly is very difficult to get everything working right.
Yeah, they're a bit of a, like you said, bottleneck. I wonder if they're gonna
It seems
seek a
like
solution there eventually.
because like and they know about it, but I think they're
Yeah.
very much entrenched into all the different types of data conversion and model making in the data center that Media Blue provides. So they're not a useless partner in any way. It's not what I'm saying. It's just it's difficult to get that little extra step beyond, and at least Jorg is very much aware of that.
Yeah, you can only use and the data you've got and stuff. And the information we do get from this as well is obviously we now does confirm that you definitely get Meteo Blue as the weather partner they can be working with. Like how we've learned that the AI has changed for the new simulator. Meteo Blue will carry on and they'll work with them and work that stuff out. But that's the information I think we get from the continuous repeated weather questions.
Very
It's like
much.
we're going to be working with Meteo Blue and that will continue.
Yeah. Same with the issues in thunderstorms at high altitude. Some guy was talking about how in airliners at cruise, you don't have any thunderstorms building up there, so there's never any deviation, unlike in real life. So again, same. We're talking to Media Blue. We need more time. Another question was basically already answered in the website from the Q&A about a year ago. Uh, ability to match controller profiles to aircraft? Yes, that was really quickly. Helicopters, yeah, they want to see things fixed, like the turbine not working right, needle not splitting, auto rotation, things like this. And so they're working on the turbine, the auto rotation. Visibly, he doesn't understand what that was about, so they need to work
Yeah,
on.
he didn't seem to
So again,
quite
that's
grasp that part of it. Seb did say, yeah, they're working on that turbine, so
yeah, and the auto
they've gone through the
rotation
trouble to get every helipad in the world. Hopefully, that determination will,
will move forward
yeah,
as well to
carry
that.
over.
Yeah,
Carry over
very
to
much
the.
so.
Yep. And I would imagine it is so.
Yeah. And then, will third parties be able to use the passenger system? And the answer was, yeah, yes, you can. There's spawn points, but that's up to the add-on maker to handle this stuff. And the last question was about the 737 MAX. Will there be paid options? Will it be essentially like a premium deluxe for the 787, or is it directly free? Essentially, is it in the base version? That was the question. And Jorg said that all the planes that have been shown so far will be free. So that's amazing. Essentially, it's going to be part of the base. So we don't know yet how they're doing their structure, premium deluxe or just deluxe or just premium or just, how they're going to do that. But currently, everything we've seen, if you buy the sim, no matter the version, you will have all these planes. I think that's really cool. So yeah, that's the
That's
presentation.
great.
I've reached the end of my notes, and we have the end of the video here. Um, yeah, I think we've been on for a little while now, about a
Went
little
a little
over an
bit over,
hour.
just like they did.
Yeah,
So
exactly. But hey, we've covered a lot in this.
it's a lot of info.
Um,
Yeah, can't cram that all into one small space.
So
So
at the same time, an hour and a half. Yeah.
yeah.
exactly.
So for you guys, do you have any like take a minute or two to maybe reflect on this? Do you have anything that you're really the most excited about? Is there anything that has not been announced that you're hoping to see? Um, what are your hopes and dreams? What are the things you really
Shared
like?
cockpit.
Yes, I was just about to
Hmm.
say, in order for me to get into the airlines, I am going to desperately need shared cockpit.
Hmm.
So shared cockpit, a lot of patience and a lot of more patience on the person that's teaching me. As far as my hopes and dreams, I think the world looks fantastic, and because I like to fly just in
Yeah, low
wild,
and slow.
remote, distant places, and I see an open patch of field in a beautiful mountainous location, and I can try to squeeze the plane down in there. To me, that's the fun challenge, is trying to find all of these crazy places to land in and take off from. And so for me, the more wild the world is, the more wild the weather might get, the more that the tessellation and the ground effects will play, like landing on, uh, who knows? Maybe you can land on a river and it's icy. Maybe the plane is going to slide, right?
Yeah,
Or if you land in a
that
muddy
could very
patch,
much
maybe you're
work.
gonna, or sand. If you had an emergency landing on the beach, let's say, and those thick tires, get caught in that sand, is it gonna jerk the plane around? Is it? I think there's a potential to have more of a realistic kind of outback kind of flying experience. So for me, that's what I'm most excited about.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can't deny the dynamic element of the world, and the career elements. I think those
Yeah,
combined
that's
with a
going to
good
be quite
learning system, be it from
interesting. Yeah,
what I said earlier about a mix of text and missions to train you on the different planes, gives you, a more overall kind of round experience about the different types of what aviation can provide. Um, Shared cockpit as well. I would really say that what I really like is the enhancement of the physics. We have class simulation that is now deeply embedded through many different ways, and the lighting engine just provides true, solid, good lighting. And it's not perfect. Even Seb said in the presentation there's still some things where it's really not right, and they're still working on it. But that, and like the CFD with wake turbulence, these are things that you don't see, you don't notice much. Once you get used to it, you get used to it, and it becomes part of the normal, everyday, flight simulator experience. But these are really the milestones into you're becoming into, the graphics are merging with the physics and are
yeah.
doing that digital twin the way they're trying, the vision they're trying to get to, right? And that vision is very difficult, but oh man, are we at an exciting point where you start to really get, a unified
Sense
connection
of,
between
yeah,
those two, right? And they wanted to simulate the magnetosphere. That's something they said from World 2.0, like a couple years ago in the Q&As. The auroras and all these different elements are all now being combined so that external forces will start to impact you in a serious way when you fly. And
yeah,
then think of what could be done in the future with volcanoes, if you fly through all the dust and the ashes,
yeah,
and
what
then
it could do to the plane.
exactly. Once you get into wear and tear systems, because they haven't talked about many of these things, they went into detail from the trailer for half of the presentation and showed partners. So they kind of went again on the careers, the graphics, and the details of certain things that were hidden in each section of the trailer, and then the partners and what they're doing. But there is still a lot of content we have yet to see. And Microsoft is doing another presentation tomorrow on the marketplace, both from business from FS20 as well as what FS24 will look like. So at this
Did they
point,
say what time that was on
it's
the channel?
tomorrow. Actually, it should be on the Microsoft channel. We should be able to see. So I'm on Eastern time. I think lives will. Yeah, there you go. Scheduled. There's two people waiting already, and that is coming up in 17 hours, June 23rd, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. I think it's like 12:30 Las Vegas time. It's in Pacific time. I don't know what
Yeah, specific.
Pacific time would
3
be
hours
like.
back. Yeah, 3
Yeah,
hours
you
different.
can look at Flight Sim Expo and then look at their schedule, and you'll find the exact timing. And then you can, or just go on this uh, YouTube's, Microsoft Flight Simulator's YouTube page, and you'll find the time. So that's going to be very exciting. All right,
Yep.
one or two sentences to close off from each of you guys, and then we'll close the video.
Uh, I'm
Farrell?
very pleased, and there are elements of what's coming that were better than I expected. So I'm well pleased.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
perfect.
just really excited by all the things we've seen. I mean, be honest with you, it makes me want to. I used to have a VR and I didn't get on it with the old flight simulator, but like, it makes me want to buy one again. Just want to fly a plane, land in those biomes, and you can get out the plane and walk around and look around. That would be like
Yeah,
really cool.
That's very
Um,
amazing. Yeah.
me
yeah,
too.
Then
I'm
on
very
my
excited.
side, I'd say I'm super excited about the flight planning and how they can integrate all the different planes and the different ways to plan your flight, fuel, payload, the actual flight planning itself. I think they're really bringing the quality flight simulation to the next level, and yeah, it's going to be a big shift in the flight sim world. So I can't wait to get my hands on it, either through an alpha beta or just through release whenever that happens. So that concludes our analysis for today. Thank you, Farrell and Arrogant. It's been incredible. I think we have a lot of good things to continue talking about for the future. So we're going to continue, juggling this in our heads and kind of adding speculation to this to what they could get further out of this.
Yeah.
So don't miss the marketplace update. That's coming out live on Microsoft's channel. We'll see if we do something for that tomorrow or not. We might. We have not decided yet. So with that said, thank you very much for listening through Twitch or YouTube, and feel free, hit the follow or like if you're still around or subscribe, and we'll see you
Yeah.
guys
We
very soon.
appreciate it.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys.
Bye.
Bye. See you again.